All right, welcome to Unit 5, which is polynomials. Section 1 will start off with the exponent properties. Now there are 6 of them, and this is something that I would highly advise you to go ahead and write down some notes. Make sure that you are prepared. They're not too difficult, but they can be confusing at times. And I think the more you practice these, the better off you're going to understand these. So let's go ahead and start off. The first one's called the product of powers. So basically what this is saying is, if I have 3 factors of a, so let's say we do a times a times a, and I multiply that times 2 more factors of a, okay? Because remember, this number just refers to how many factors we have, okay? Then all we have to do is count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our answer, if we had a to the third times a squared, would be a to the fifth, okay? So a rule that we will do is when we multiply 2 items that have the exact same base, they may have different exponents, but they have to have the same base. So we'll put that down here. They have to have the same base. Then when I multiply them, all I'm going to do is add their exponents. Okay, so we're going to add exponents. Okay. All right. So let's do a couple of examples. So on number 1, since we're multiplying x to the third times x to the fourth times x squared, since the bases are all the same, I'm just going to take x to the 3 plus 4 plus 2. Well, 3 plus 4 is 7, plus 2 gives me, this would be x to the ninth, in simplifying it. Down at the bottom, all I can do is I can only put together the items that have the exact same base. So I have an m to the third times another m to the third times an m, okay? And then I'm going to put together my n squared times n to the fifth, okay? So all I did was rearrange those. Remember, by the commutative property, I can rearrange items as being multiplied. So, and remember, if there's not an exponent here, then there's an invisible 1 right there, okay? So all this is going to be is m to the 3 plus 1, n to the 2 plus 5, okay? So 3 plus 3 plus 1 gives me m to the 7th. 2 plus 5 gives me n to the 7th, okay? Okay? So all we do is we add their exponents. All right. So the next one would be, this one's called a power of a power. So in other words, if I took 3 factors of a squared, so remember this one just tells me how many times I have to write this. So a squared times a squared times a squared. And if you remember from the previous rule, we add them. 2 plus 2 plus 2 would give me 6. So this one would actually be a to the 6th. So a rule that we might use when we raise a power to a power, we're actually going to multiply those powers. So it's going to be a to the m times n. Okay? All right, so let's do an example. So number 1, since I have a power to a power, this is going to turn into m times 2 times 5, which would be m to the 10th, okay? The one on the bottom, number 2, this is going to be d to the 4 times 6 because it's raising it to power to a power. Then it's going to be d to the 24th, okay? All right. The next rule is a product of a power, and a lot of students will view this one as the distributive property for exponents, okay? And basically what you're doing is, remember this tells us we got to write AB 3 times. So AB times AB times AB. So if we remember from our previous rule, we get A times A times A, which is going to give us A to the third, and B times B times B, which is B to the third, okay? So a rule that we might use is what you're technically going to do is you're going to take this m to the third and you're going to distribute it and put both of them to that power. So it'd be a to the m, b to the m. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and do a couple of examples where we would simplify. So whenever we're raising, we're going to distribute that power. So it ends up being b squared squared and c squared. Well, remember, we raise a power to a power, we have to multiply those. So it ends up being b times 2 and c squared. So our final answer would be b to the 4th c squared. Okay. On the bottom, even though there's 4 items in there, everything has to be raised to this power, and this is the important thing that you have to remember. 3 has to be raised to the power, m to the 4th has to be raised to the power, n to the 5th has to be raised to the power, and p squared has to be raised to the 3rd power. So if I raise 3 to the 3rd power, m to the 4th to the 3rd power, I have n to the 5th to the 3rd power, and I have p squared to the 3rd power. So 3 to the 3rd, remember, this is not going to be 9. 3 to the 3rd means 3 times 3 times 3. Okay? So 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. Remember, m4 times 3 gives us 12. N to the 5th to the 3rd power, remember we multiply those, and that would be n to the 15th. The next one would be multiply these, and we get p to the 6th. Okay? So this is what our final answer would look like. Okay? So the last set of examples is, and these can get kind of long, but remember that these aren't too difficult as long as you remember those exponent rules. Okay? So first of all, remember when I have a power outside a pair of parentheses, I've got to distribute it. So 3 squared, and then I'm going to raise d to the 3 times 2, which would be d to the 6th. So my final answer would be 9d to the 6th. Okay. Number 2, before we can do anything, you have to eliminate the parentheses. So you're going to raise, and take one of these at a time. Okay. So we're going to take d to the 4th. I'm sorry, 2 to the 4th. So remember, 2 to the 4th is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So that's going to give us an answer of 16. C to the 3rd to the 4th power, remember we have to multiply those, so it's going to give me c to the 12th. And then d to the 4 times 4 is going to give me d to the 16th. And that's, we're going to multiply that then times 3 squared, which is going to give me 9, c squared, because remember there's an invisible 1 there, and d to the 3rd to the 2nd power, multiply those, and I get d to the 6th. Okay? And then the next step would be, we're going to multiply everything. But remember, when we multiply everything, we can only put items that are alike. So the first thing is, I can multiply 16 times 9, which is going to give me 144. I can only put items together that have the exact same base. So c squared, I'm sorry, c to the 12th times c squared. Now remember, when I'm multiplying those, I have to add their exponents. So I get c to the 14th. And the last one would be d to the 16th times d to the 6th, which would be d to the 22nd. Okay? All right, so go ahead and pause the video at this time and go ahead and try number 3 as a you try. And when you're finished, go ahead and restart the video and we will work through it together. All right, so number 3, so remember the first thing we have to do is we have to distribute this power. So 4 squared is going to give us 16. M squared to the 2nd power is going to give us m to the 4th, because we have to multiply them. N 3 squared, or n to the 3rd to the 2nd power, we have to multiply those, so I get n to the 6th times 5 to the 4th, so it would be 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 is actually going to be 625. M to the 3rd to the 4th power, remember I have to multiply anytime I raise a power to a power. And then n to the 3rd to the 4th power is going to give us n to the 12th. Okay? So now the next step is just multiplying items. So if I start off by multiplying 16 times 625, I'm going to get 10,000. M to the 4th times m to the 12th is going to give me, remember, when I'm multiplying two bases like that, two products, then I'm going to add their exponents. It's going to give me m to the 16th. And then I get n. And remember, when I'm multiplying, I have to add their bases. I'm sorry, add their exponents. So 6 plus 12 is going to give me 18. So your final answer should have been 10,000 m to the 16th, n to the 18th. Okay? So this go ahead and completes part 1. Go ahead and watch part 2. There are 3 more rules. At the end of the second video, then we're going to recap all of them. And then you can do your practice problems and then your quick check.